Good evening, everyone. And how's that? Do you guys hear me now? Hello? Okay, I think you should be able to hear me now. Testing, testing. Awesome. Okay, sorry guys. Still setting up my new studio here in LA, and it's been just moved into a new place, so I'm kind of waiting to get everything together here, and so it's been a lot of work. But so I was just kind of doing a 3-week adventure, really. I was just up in New York on an adventure with some friends up there, which was really awesome. I went jet skiing. I almost killed myself on a jet ski, which was crazy. I mean, not really. I didn't almost kill myself, but I did have a pretty crazy crash and was a little injured from that for a little while, unfortunately. So right after that, I basically came back to LA for a day, and then I went up to the Mount Shasta Summer Conference with a lot of fellow speakers of mine and colleagues, and we had a really awesome time. I was there for, I guess, really a week. I mean, I got there a couple days before the event. Then the event was like a 4-day thing. And then I stayed for like another couple of days after the event before going down, because I actually drove all the way up there. I mean, really like right after flying back from New York. So it was crazy. Leon the Wise says, "You ate water." I totally did. I ate water when I fell off my jet ski. It was crazy. Sorry, it's a little dark here. I really need to readjust these lights. Sorry about that, you guys. But so I want to like share with you all my adventure and then catch up a little bit on the latest in disclosure space news. I know I haven't been going live as much as I used to last year because it's just been a lot of crazy traveling and trips. And next month is going to be crazy for me as well, because I'm going to be going to Greece at the beginning of the month. And then the end of the month, I'm going to be going to Burning Man. So there's a lot going on here, but yeah, really exciting adventures. And also, I'm going to be doing some work here in the studio, maybe some more like pre-edited shows instead of just live shows, now that I'm like all set up here. So I'm really excited about that as well. So I want to talk about today, I'm going to talk about Telos, the legendary city in Mount Shasta. I'm going to talk about the Lemuriens. I want to show you all some footage of some ships I actually saw in Mount Shasta at this UFO watch, which was wild. I'm going to do a short recap on just the latest in like space disclosure news. And yeah, I think that's about it. All right, so let's get started here. And before I get started, actually, let me remind you all to please check out my art over at shamanspears.com. This is what helps fund me and keeps me going. As like I've said many times on the show before, I can no longer work in Hollywood because I do not have was it 6 shots now? I believe it is. I think it's 6 shots I need to work in Hollywood. Since I don't have those, this is what I'm doing now. So if you could support me, it would be very much appreciated. I have quite a few of this. Oh, I need to redo my slide a little here. Some things are missing, but yeah. So I have some of the Yin Yang collection left, which is, by the way, if you're just tuning in now, you don't know what I'm talking about here. These are my shaman spears. They're uniquely handcrafted energy channeling devices, which I've invented myself. And I filled them all. They're all made up bamboo. I filled them all with sand from sacred places around the world, magnets, naturally magnetic hematite sand, and organite materials. So this is my Yin Yang collection. Some latest from that. I still have some left from the Odyssey collection as well. And I just started working on my latest collection here yesterday. I'm really stoked about that one. That's going to be really awesome. So definitely look out for that. That's going to be really sweet. All right. Um, oh, also, besides the spears on my site, I do also have. Oh, here's a couple mini spears I have. I also have some organite daggers, which I made. They're not actually for stabbing. They're like, uh, basically like shaped like daggers, but they're not like sharp. So they're just kind of cool looking. I also have some organite pyramids and organite bracelets and other things. So make sure you come check those out. Again, that's on shamanspears.com. All right, let's get started here. Let me go back to my comments here. I'm sorry it's so dark. I don't know why this my lighting readjusted before the show. Wish I had someone here to help me out, but whatever. Okay, let's do just a short little recap on the latest in space news that's kind of happened over the past week or so here since I've gone live last. So the Indian Express does a really good recap here. So I'm just going to read all of this because it's just a little short, and then I'll get into the topic of tonight's show. So Space News Weekly Recap, James Webb Space Telescope, SpaceX explosion, and more. In the last week, NASA pulled back the curtain on a photo gallery that flags off the next era of space exploration. The first images from the James Webb Telescope, the advanced James Webb Telescope, gave us some of the most detailed views of the farthest cosmic objects in the galaxy. But that was not the only big space news from the last week. Here's our weekly recap of all the space news from last week. Hubble captures a galactic gem. In the vast depths of space, entire galaxies can collide and merge with each other in a process that throws out vast nebulae of dust and debris that will lead to the birth of new stars. Webb's predecessor, Hubble, captured such an event, CGCG 3962, in an unusual multi-armed galaxy merger that is 520 million light years away from our planet and the direction of the constellation Orion. The merger was observed by Galaxy Zoo visitors. Galaxy Zoo is a citizen science project where thousands of volunteers classify galaxies to help scientists sort through vast amounts of data generated by various robotic telescopes. The most astronomically interesting objects from the Galaxy Zoo are selected for follow-up observations with the Hubble after a public vote. SpaceX booster explosion. So SpaceX's booster rocket, the first half of SpaceX's next generation Starship rocket system, burst into flames as it was undergoing pre-launch tests on Monday. In the past, SpaceX launched early prototypes of Starship's top half close to 10 kilometers off the ground many times, but it never launched the fully stacked, nearly 122 meters tall rocket system into orbit. This is a significantly more challenging task. Company founder Elon Musk said that the booster rocket will probably return to its launch mount in Texas this week. Musk told Reuters, damage is minor, but the booster will be transformed back to the high bay for inspections, returning to the launch stand probably next week. The company had targeted the end of summer for spacecraft's debut orbital flight, but Monday's explosion called that timeline into question. Boeing's Aurora to build Virgin Galactic spacecraft carrier plans. Virgin Galactic has signed an agreement with Boeing subsidiary Aurora Flight Sciences to build the former's new twin fuselage carrier plane called the Spaceship Two. The Spaceship Two is designed to ferry the company's next generation spaceship towards space. Virgin said the new carrier planes, named motherships, are designed for faster production rates and to fly over 200 flights per year. Under the assignment signed by the two companies, Aurora will deliver parts of the craft for assembly in 2025. Webb telescope, the universe like never before. NASA unveiled the first images from the James Webb Space Telescope this week, and they are stunning as we could imagine it. The first image shared by the space agency was that of the galaxy cluster SMACS 0723 and other cosmic objects in a deep field image. Webb took about 4 days to create the image, whereas Hubble took over 10 days for a much lower resolution image. And by the way, I've seen a lot of people joking that they think that this isn't real, and it's like, okay, why is it that like there's like security cameras, like we can zoom in this far, into space, but then like the security cameras on the streets can't even zoom in on people's faces? I've seen a lot of people joke about that, and people joking that they don't think this is real. I don't know. I mean, like, what I don't get is why can't they just zoom in on a planet? If they can zoom, like, all the way to the end of the galaxy, why can't they just zoom in on specific planets and see if there's, like, extraterrestrials on them? That's what I don't understand. So, I don't know. I think it's going to happen, though. I think something's going to happen with that. I think, like I've said before on the show, I think this is their way of kind of doing a delayed, like slow disclosure process. So, like I've said before, I feel that maybe they'll be like, oh, we found microorganisms on Mars. And then they're going to be like, oh, we found these mammals on this planet over here. When, they may have been working with different ET races the whole time. That's my personal opinion, but I can't say whether or not that's the truth. Okay, so also this image that I'm showing on the screen here, I believe people have said is actually a small part of the sky. Like if you look at the sky, it would be like just a zoom in of like one small part of the sky that would be like the size of like your fingertip when you're like pointing at the sky. So that's kind of crazy. That's really crazy. So moving on here, the second image was spectrum data of the gas giant planet WASP 96b, which is located nearly 1,150 light years. The first spectrum of an exoplanet taken by Webb is probably the most exciting picture for scientists, as it revealed the telltale signs of water vapor on a distant planet. It is the most detailed near-infrared transmission spectrum of an exoplanet captured to date and covers an exponentially wide range of wavelength. And something else I want to say about this is I think it would be really interesting. I know scientists have kind of collected data on all the planets that supposedly are in, I forget what they call it, like the Goldilocks zone or whatever they call it, where it's like in a zone where it's close enough to its home planet or home star to have conditions on it that would be similar to Earth that could host life. So I think it would be actually really interesting if they just specifically targeted these planets and zoomed in on them to see if there was anything on those. I think that would be very interesting. So moving on here, the third image was that of a planetary nebula surrounding a dying star called the Southern Ring Nebula or the Eight Burst Nebula. Its image showed for the first time that the second dimmer star at its center is surrounded by dust. The other brighter star is younger and might project its own planetary nebula in the future. The fourth image was a huge mosaic of Stephan's quintet and is the largest image taken by Webb to date. The image covers over 150 million pixels and is constructed from 1,000 separate image files. It shows the dramatic impact of shockwaves as galaxies smash through the cluster. The image also shows signs of a supermassive black hole at the center of one of the galaxies in unprecedented detail. That is wild. The last and final shared by NASA was that of NGC 3324, a star forming region in the Carina Nebula. The image looked like it had mountains and valleys speckled with glittering stars. The region of the nebula was captured in infrared for the first time and shows previously invisible areas of starbirth. So that's a really cool recap. Let's see here. Okay. Second here. Okay, so that was a really cool recap. I'm just gonna come back here and look at the comments now. I'm so sorry the lights are so weird. I'm gonna try to adjust this just a little bit. Oh. Okay. A little bit better. Okay. Sorry guys, I need to redo my lighting a little bit here. But okay, let's see here. I also had one more article to share about disclosure news before coming on. Oh man, really needed more time to set up everything today. Sorry about that, you guys. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, so this came out just a few days ago. Scientists have detected a strange and persistent radio signal that sounds like a heartbeat in a distant galaxy. Scientists have discovered a strange and persistent radio signal from a far off galaxy that sounds like a heartbeat. Astronomers at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and elsewhere detected the signal, which is classified as a fast radio burst or FRB, but lasted much longer. A typical FRB, which is a strong burst of radio waves, lasts a few milliseconds. The news signal lasted up to 3 seconds, about 1,000 times stronger than average. According to a news release, the astrophysical origins of FRBs are unknown. The signal repeated over 0.02 seconds in a clear pattern, almost like a heartbeat. It was unusual, said Danielle Micheli, a postdoc in MIT's Kavli Institute for Astrophysics and Space Research. Not only was it very long-lasting, about 3 seconds, but there was periodic peaks that were remarkably precise, emitting every fraction of a second. Boom, 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 like a heartbeat. This was the first time the signal itself is periodic. The signal came from a distant galaxy several billion light years from Earth. Researchers from MIT and McGill University in Canada, who published a study on the signal, have named it FRB 201912221A. It is currently the longest lasting FRB with the clearest periodic pattern detected to date. The first FRB was discovered in 2007, and hundreds of similar radio flashes have been detected in space since. So it continues there, but I find that extremely interesting because it reminds me quite a bit of this book that I read earlier this year, which I've mentioned many times on the show before, actually, and that is The Three-Body Problem, which I highly recommend. It's actually written by a Chinese author, and it was originally written in Chinese, translated to English, and it's really fascinating because they actually get very scientific in this book, and it kind of gets into all these interesting concepts such as type 1, type 2, type 3 civilizations, the difference between them, and the three-body problem, of course. What's also interesting is that it gets into, I mean, I won't ruin the book, but it gets into basically them finding a radio signal coming from off planet and trying to communicate with these extraterrestrials. And I won't ruin the end. I just highly recommend reading it, and you should definitely do that. That's all I'll say. Okay. But and also, I really hope they make a movie on that series actually, because it's really, really interesting. Okay. Oh, someone here commented. I think this is awesome. Leon the Wise commented, first FRB was actually found by Nikola Tesla. I don't know if I said that was the first in the article. That's really cool. I'm sure there's been many. So yeah, I didn't know that about Nikola Tesla. That's awesome. Thank you for that. Okay. Okay. So let's get into Mount Shasta here. So I actually had some pretty incredible experiences this past weekend. And so Mount Shasta is a very interesting place. There's a lot of ancient stories about there supposedly, and this has come from many different sources around the world. And this is why this is interesting. Like, first of all, like, there's all these people that have supposedly been regressed and found out that they had past lives on Lemuria in Atlantis, and that after their civilization collapsed, some of them escaped across the ocean and came and hid in Mount Shasta, the remnants of this early civilization, and kind of created a new civilization in Mount Shasta. I'm going to get into that later. So I was just at the Mount Shasta Summer Conference, and it was really interesting because actually leading up to going to Mount Shasta, I went to Mount Shasta originally around this time last year, and it was really weird because this book I was reading leading up to going that time just happened to talk about this certain stone called the Omphalos stone, which supposedly these Atlanteans used as some sort of technology. And it was really interesting because the book didn't mention Mount Shasta, and I thought it was a fiction book. But then when I went there, I met with someone who is from the Order of Melchizedek, and they have this pyramid up on Mount Shasta. And he told me, he started talking about the Omphalos stone, saying that there was one hidden in Mount Shasta. And I'm like, dude, this is so crazy. I literally just read this. So I get a lot of weird synchronicities with this when I'm reading. And I did a show on that last year, which was very interesting. You can go back and find it if you're interested in that. But also, so in that show, I believe it's the Omphalos stone. What is it? Or something like that. But so it's interesting because this past couple months leading up to me going to Mount Shasta this time, I was reading this book here, which was given to me by Dr. J at Dr. J Radio. And it is written by Preston Dennett, and is called UFOs Over California. And so it just happened to mention Mount Shasta and the Lemuriens, the supposed beings that live in Mount Shasta, in this book. So I'm going to get into that. Also, I just started listening. So my uncle is a past life regression therapist, or a hypnotherapist, and he does past life regressions. And so I have like a big background with that. I know a lot about that, and I've actually dabbled in it a little myself. So I started listening actually to this sorry, let me see this here. Okay. And so just recently I started before I went to Mount Shasta, I started listening to this audio book about these channeled past life regressions from Mount Shasta, for basically like Lemurians and Atlanteans, and what happened to their race as it fell, how it happened, and how they ended up in Mount Shasta. And I just thought it was really fascinating. I'm like, I did not know that what I was listening to was going to talk about Mount Shasta right before going there. And it mentioned that, like I just said, that this race, the Lemurians, from basically had to escape what was actually the outer parts of Thailand, was from this one story. Some of these remnants of this civilization that survived, they went across the ocean and they ended up on the west coast. And then they went inside Mount Shasta because basically there was like this huge war with the Atlanteans, and they just wanted to get away from the rest of civilization. So they hid inside the mountain. And it was really interesting because in the book it mentioned this bioluminescent algae that they use, that it grows on the mountain in Mount Shasta, that they use to supposedly light up the inside of the caverns. And then also, like, it was saying that these beings, they just eat mushrooms and things like that, that they grow inside the caverns, or like deep inside the mountain. So after going to Mount Shasta, after the conference, I actually went with Brad Olson. And so there's also this story Brad Olson told me about someone. I didn't really meet him at the event, I don't think, but Lowell Johnson has a story where he actually went to up on Mount Shasta, and I guess like fell through this. Someone took him, like I guess it was a Lemurian, took him through this interdimensional doorway into Mount Shasta and into the civilization Telos, and he actually got to experience it for a few days and came back. So Brad Olson actually took me to this area where supposedly he went through, and I actually have something filmed that's probably going to be on Rice TV with Ben Chastain later this week. But it was really interesting because there's this doorway almost like in the rock, like way off the trail on the mountain, and it just looks like this arched doorway made out of the rock. And it was interesting because we're knocking on all the rocks, and then they just sounded like very solid. But then there was this large stone in the middle, and when you knocked on it, it was hollow. It sounded very much hollow and rang like a bell, which is really interesting. So, I was hiking around the mountain all day, and I didn't actually end up finding the Lemurians. I thought maybe I might, but it was really interesting, being there and seeing that in person. The energy on the mountain is definitely really fascinating. And besides that, we actually went and did a sky watch one of the nights. And I'm going to show footage from that now, actually. But we did a little sky watch with John Polk up on the mountain. And we actually saw quite a few ships that seemed to be dropping down into the mountain, or maybe they're just going past in the sky and it seemed like they were dropping down the mountain, but they definitely weren't planes. Like, they were changing colors and powering up. So let me go ahead and share that with you all right now. Let's see here.
Oh yeah, that one's like changing color.
Okay, so you can see right here.
Whoa, that was a flash. Yeah, a little fainter now.
Super bright one.
Right
Super
here.
bright. Right above.
Dude, it just powered up.
Oh
It powered up.
Oh my gosh.
Woohoo!
Love you so much.
Wow, that was awesome.
Dude, it's like there's like a light that's like dancing off of it, you guys. It's like it's like projecting a light.
Okay.
Wow, it's projecting.
Just mute this little bit here.
Hey, I'm gonna take your laser away. I'm gonna take your laser away if you do not quit circling it. All right?
Let's see how many different colors it's like. But let me just show you when it powered up again like that. That was like crazy.
Oh, dude, you guys
look right
right above us.
Super bright one. Watch this.
Right here.
Bright. Watch this again.
Right above.
Dude,
Look
it just
how
powered up.
bright that gets.
Oh my gosh.
And then it fades and keeps going.
Wow.
And then there's these lights coming out of
Dude,
it.
it's like there's like a
And then it just keeps getting fainter and goes away. So that was probably the craziest one. And I really have about like we got tons of footage. But yeah, it was really interesting. So that was just probably the wildest one, and I'll just go ahead and share that one. Yeah, so that was really wild. By the way, I just realized I should probably send that over to my homies at Third Phase of Moon and see if they want to do a little thing on that as well. So I'll see about that. But yeah, that was really cool to see. So, that was just probably one of the things that we saw that night. I mean, there's probably about 50 ships or whatever they were, but that one was so obviously not a plane or anything else, from the way it just like powered up like that, and then was changing colors and things like that. Like that's just not normal. It's interesting because like that was one you could actually see with your naked eye. We had night vision goggles and things like that, but that one you could just see without needing anything to look at it. So that was really wild, really wild. Okay, so what to start with here? Okay, so that was my experience this last weekend, and I want to, I guess, share with you all what I found this really amazing website here that talks about Telos. So Telos is the city that is in Mount Shasta, and I'm not saying that this is definitely here, but there's so many stories of this. Actually, you know what? Before I share this, I want to share with you all an actual account. I mean, this is all from the site, supposedly channeled or whatever from past life regressions. But if you want a real physical account, this book, UFOs Over Mount Shasta, Dr. J from Dr. J Radio gave me by Preston Dennett, has a lot of really incredible, accredited sightings from all over California. So I was reading this and it got into the story of some stories from Mount Shasta. So I want to just go ahead and read it here. So I guess I'll do a little story time. I tried to find an article online, but I couldn't find it. So I'm going to just read what it has in here. Let's see here. Okay, the first wave of modern UFO reports came from the Mount Shasta area, today one of California's active UFO hotspots. According to author Wishart Survey, UFO activity occurred there as early as the 1930s. What makes the Mount Shasta sighting so unusual is that the aliens responsible for the encounters allegedly live under the mountain itself. I mean, so this is aliens in this book, but, in my opinion, they wouldn't be aliens if they're in the mountain. That means they would be interterrestrial, not extraterrestrial. So while this remains unproven, it's actually supported by several first-hand accounts. The Mount Shasta legends began in the late 1800s when local residents reported encounters with strange individuals who would emerge from the forest to visit local towns, to trade gold nuggets and gold dust for supplies. This in itself was not very unusual. However, the appearance of the people left a memorable impression. They were described as tall, graceful, and agile, with distinctive features such as large foreheads and long curly hair. The strangers wore unusual clothes, including headdresses with a special decoration that came down from the forehead to the bridge of the nose. Visits from these strangers caused considerable interest, and the local residents began to investigate the area. Several of them were surprised to come upon areas in the foothills that glowed with powerful illuminations with no known source. Others heard strange music. Still others claimed that they found themselves suddenly and temporarily paralyzed, or they would be accosted by a heavily covered and concealed person who would lift them up and turn him away. A few people claim to have encountered very tall, friendly people dressed in long, flowing robes, who would hold deeply philosophical conversations about love, spirituality, and the fate of the planet. Needless to say, these reports brought more visitors to the area. People attempted to chase down and photograph the tall strangers, but in each case, the strangers would either run away or simply vanish. Other visitors claimed to see bizarre-looking cattle unlike anything seen in America. Meanwhile, the strangers continued to make rare appearances in local towns. Those who have come to stores in nearby cities, especially at Weed, which is a city in California, have spoken English in a perfect manner, which with perhaps a tinge of British accents, and have been reluctant to answer questions or give any information about themselves. The goods they have purchased for have always been paid for in gold nuggets of far greater value than the article purchased, and they have refused to accept any change, indicating that to them Gold was of no value, and they had no need for money of any kind. Straight. Okay, I'm just trying to see. Just reading the comments here. Okay, there's a little bit more actually. So strange activity continued up to the 1930s, including accounts of electromagnetic effects on automobiles. Right, survey of one particular incident. At an unexpected point where a light flashed before them, the automobile refused to function properly, for the electric circuit seemed to lose its power, and not until the visitors emerged from the car and backed it onto the road for 100 feet and turned it in the opposite direction would the electric power give any manifestation and the engine function properly. Most intriguing are the many early reports of UFO-like craft in the area, writes Survey. There are hundreds of others who have testified to having seen peculiarly shaped boats which have flown out of this region high in the air over the hills and valleys of California and have been seen by others to come onto the waters of the Pacific Ocean at the shore and then continue out on the seas as vessels. And others have seen these boats rise again in the air and go upon the land of some of the islands of the Pacific. Only recently, a group of persons playing golf on one of the golf links of California near the foothills of Sierra Nevada range saw a peculiar silver-like vessel rise in the air and float over the mountaintops and disappear. It was unlike any star airship that has ever been seen, and there was absolutely no noise emanating from it to indicate that it was moved by a motor of any kind. Today, legends about an underground city beneath Mount Shasta continue to circulate. The area is now a magnet to the New Age community and has produced a number of impressive modern UFO reports. So that's that story there. Again, I recommend this book, UFOs Over California. I was only able to read about half of this before kind of moving on to another book. I need to finish it because Dr. J is actually going to have me bring the author on the show once I finish, and we're going to go over some of the stuff in here. Okay, so sorry, let me get some water. Okay, so I want to talk about the ancient city of Telos. I found a site that kind of gets into it. Supposedly these are different accounts or channeled accounts, things like that, and I just want to do as much research as I can and, share as much information as I can as possible with you guys. So let me pull this up here. Okay, so I just found this site online. It's called Telos City of Love, and I just wanted to kind of share, what people believe is under Mount Shasta, because I think it's really fascinating. So about Telos. The original home of the people of Telos was ancient Lemuria, Mu on the map, a very large landmass in the Pacific Ocean. All that now exists of Lemuria is many small islands, including the beautiful islands of Hawaii, which are the tops of mountains in Lemuria. Ancient Lemuria had many colonies and existed for eons as a model of peace and harmony on the planet. See the history of ancient Lemuria for an explanation. Then, beginning approximately 25,000 years ago, a gradual fall in consciousness began to occur in the inhabitants. This eventually resulted in a great conflict between Lemuria and her colony Atlantis, leading to a series of thermonuclear wars which destabilized the firmament of the Earth. There were also unfortunate cataclysms, earthquakes, and floods happening at the same time. The Lemurians eventually realized the futility of war and made the choice that about 12,000 years ago to relocate to a safer place and pursue a higher spiritual path. Following this spiritual guidance, they decided to reestablish their home inside the dome of an extinct volcano at Mount Shasta, California, USA. Mount Shasta had always been a place of great sacredness for the whole planet. The Lemurians, who had lost all but 25,000 of their people in the catastrophes, also recognized that being within rather than on the surface of the earth would provide safety from the continuing earthquakes, floods, and aggressive marauders. These people proceeded to pursue their deepest desires, to focus all of their attention on evolving spiritually, and to hold the light securely in place for the rest of the planet. The present day Telosians are the Lemurians of that ancient, challenging period. Over time, within their chosen location, Mount Shasta, they have developed a magnificent, loving community with the highest spiritual ideals. They are waiting for the right moment to share with us, their brothers and sisters on the surface, what they have learned. Allegedly. Okay, so just looking at what it says here. Okay, so Telos is located within the mountain of Mount Shasta in Siskiyou County in Northern California, USA. Because Mount Shasta is an extinct volcano, there is a hollow dome within the mountain. The city of Telos was constructed utilizing the existing dome and the land beneath the dome for approximately 1 mile into the earth. At the time of its construction, the population of the city was approximately 25,000 people. Mount Shasta is the largest volcanic peak in the continental United States and rises to a height of 14,162 feet above sea level. Below is a diagram of Telos constructed as accurately as possible for the research information from the research information available. Okay, so here's a drawing of that. Here's the dome inside the mountain. And this is interesting. This is actually kind of my first time seeing this. And I would have thought that, the area that was inside the mountain might be a little higher up. But it's showing here that it's actually kind of more below the mountain and not really as much inside it. So it's saying there's these different levels in here, which I'm going to get into in a second. And it's saying the top of the dome is about 5,282 feet above sea level. Or, I'm sorry, above like the ground. Okay. So looking at the mountain from the outside, the top of the inner dome within the mountain is about 1 mile up from the base of the mountain. The width of the city at ground level is approximately 1.5 miles wide. The city of Telos is constructed vertically and contains 6 levels within the mountain, the first of which is at ground level. The remaining 5 levels are constructed in the crust or the mantle of the earth directly below the first or ground level. The bottom of the city at the lowest level is about 1 mile below the ground level of the mountain, and the dimensions of the city, therefore, are approximately 1.5 miles wide by 2 miles deep from the top. The population of Telos is approximately 1.5 million people. They reside on levels 1 and 2 of the city of Telos. Allegedly. Anticipating your questions as to the seemingly limited space that these 2 levels of the city offer for the number of people, it should be noted that the Telosian people live in a higher spiritual dimension than we do. Most people who live on the surface of the earth live in what is described as third dimension. In third dimension, time and space are very solidly defined. In higher dimensions, there is much more flexibility with time and space, with much less solid boundaries. While the space that is described here for the Telosians may appear small to us, for all that appears to take place there, it provides an ample space for a multitude and for all the many activities described with ease. The following are the words of Master Adama. So Master Adama is supposedly the leader of the Lemuriens, and this is a channeled message. So I'm going to go ahead and read this. We have within our ability to expand a space such that you experience a space that is much larger and more expansive than you expected it to be from the outside looking in. I understand this is a challenging concept. All of you are living in the illusion of space and time that exists in the third dimension. Space is a third dimension construct which helps provide humanity with a framework and reference points. We are not limited to these constructs, and so it is within our knowledge to create space in a different way than that which you are accustomed to. So level 1. This is the top level under the dome itself. This is the heart and soul of the city. And the center of this level is a very large, beautiful white pyramid shaped temple. The temple of Ma Ra, dedicated to the order of Melchizedek. The temple has a capacity of 10,000 people. The capstone of this pyramid is an unusual stone, a gift to the Telosian people from Venus. This living stone picks up the cosmic emanations of the color appropriate for the sacred flame of each day. Um, it's like I don't know if any of this is true. I just find it very interesting. So when I'm reading all this, I'm not reading it as fact to you. This is all for you to decide, I guess. But I think this is really fascinating. So I'm just gonna keep reading it and believe what you will, I guess. So the importance of this is that the population of Telos can see the color of the flame or ray each day in the light around the pyramid. They can then plan their daily activity to be resonant with the vibration and content of the ray for each day. For example, on Sunday, the yellow ray is prominent in the atmosphere. The content of the yellow ray is illumination, hence, a good day to study. When the pink ray is prominent, unconditional love and artistic endeavors, that is a day for painting and music. In this way, attuning to the cosmic vibration, the society is able to achieve great harmony and balance. Surrounding the Pyramid Temple are the Communications Center, a meeting place for the Council of 12, a hall of records, temples dedicated to the sacred flames, arts and entertainment facilities, schools, food and clothing dispatches, and the majority of the residents in Telos. Mount Shasta is also an interplanetary and intergalactic multi-dimensional portal. So there is a spaceport within the top level of the mountain for visiting ships. Hey, I can say I saw a lot of ships drop into that mountain, and you know, I definitely saw that happen. I don't know if they were necessarily dropping into the mountain or if they were going by. Because they looked like stars kind of powering up and changing colors. I just showed you one that we recorded earlier, but we recorded many. And I something that kind of comes to mind for me is when they talk about basically powering up the basically transforming into a light being. I forget what the word for it is when you're able to kind of activate your toroidal field and kind of uh, basically like go interdimensional by activating the Merkaba in your toroidal field. It kind of like creates this like sphere of like light and color around you. And I almost wondered if maybe it was like something like that we were seeing, because it looked like, I mean, they looked like these like white orbs that were changing colors and dropping into the mountain. But it could have been like a ship. I couldn't tell, like, if maybe it was a ship from far away that was going just past the earth. But I mean, it looked a lot to me like things were dropping down into the mountain. They were like kind of changing colors and powering up, but they looked like giant white orbs maybe. So I just wanted to say that for continuing here. Okay, so the following is a description from Brian Tillman of his perception of the first level of Talos. Just standing here outside the Great Hall, my feeling is that I've stepped into a wonderland. No Hollywood movie could compare. Its beauty is far beyond any cityscape or skyline I've ever seen. Everything is pristine and beautiful, everything is in perfect form. Most of the infrastructure, roadways, and buildings here appear to be made of crystal, and everything is beautiful and radiant. So levels 2 through 6. The next 5 levels are built below ground level. Each level covers several square miles. There are elevators to navigate the levels. Level 2 houses a manufacturing center for clothing, furniture, and art forms, and several schools for children and adults. It also includes residential areas with more housing for singles, couples, and extended families. Level 3 is dedicated totally to hydroponic gardens that feed the entire city and cover about 7 acres of land. Telosians eat vegetables, fruit, grains, and nuts. Hydroponic gardens produce crops constantly with very little soil and much water. The crops do not need fertilizer and do not deplete the soil. Minerals are added. These crops produce enough food for the total population, though it should be noted that the fifth dimensional beings do not require the amount of food that we ingest here on the surface, since their bodies are not as dense. This is interesting because I actually talk a lot about this in my presentation, so I find it fascinating that they talk about this here. I mean, I talk about like vertical gardens, which are hydroponic like garden like cities basically. So I didn't realize they had these here, but I actually gave my presentation on this on the mountain, which was interesting. Okay, so possible hydroponic gardens of Telos. Level 4, here there are more hydroponic gardens, more manufacturing, and a large area of natural parks with lakes and fountains where people go to relax. Level 5 is dedicated totally to nature. It contains a large natural environment with tall trees and lakes in a park like atmosphere. That is a habitat for a wide variety of animals, some of which are extinct on the surface. All animals are vegetarian and non-violent and live side by side without fear. The lion and the lamb, quote unquote. This level also provides much relaxation for the people of Telos. Levels 3, 4, and 5 produce enough oxygen to sustain the biosphere. No, level 6 is reserved for storage and preservation of important records and artifacts preserved for posterity. Okay, so this I just find this site really interesting, and I was trying to find some information somewhere, more information on this. Okay, let me maybe get into something else here. So it actually gets into the ancient story of Lemuria and what happened to the Lemurians here. But that's gonna be a whole different thing on its own. But it shows all the evidence here of what's left over from the ancient civilization of Lemuria. Even like underwater areas. These would be examples of in northern Japan, some underwater pyramids. And supposedly these are monkeys. These lemurs, what are called lemurs, were actually originally on the continent of Lemuria, and they are now left over, and that's why they're called lemurs. And that's in Madagascar and India. These are found. So supposedly Easter Island was a part of Lemuria, and obviously Hawaii. So I'm just showing you some evidence here and going through that. I can't read all of this now. I would have liked to. I was planning to, but I've already been talking so long. I think I'll save this for another show. But actually, right now I'm reading a really interesting channeled or past life regressions from Atlantis. Really interesting Audible book, which maybe I'll share on a later show. Okay, so I'm going to come back and look at everyone's comments here. All right. So I'm just looking through the comments here. Thanks to everyone for joining tonight. I think I'm going to go do all this in a later show, maybe talk more about Lemuria. Because I've been going on about an hour now. So let me save that for a later show. I hope you all found this interesting tonight. I will be doing a show this coming Wednesday. So please stay tuned for my regular show days, which is on Wednesday. I'm going to be doing a show with Mary Edwards, I believe it is, who I met at the conference at Mount Shasta. I actually met a lot of interesting people who I'll be interviewing in the coming weeks. And one of them is Mary Edwards, who she works for NASA and has worked for other companies. She has a really fascinating story. Both her parents, I believe, work for NASA. She actually built space habitats, which is interesting because I speak about space habitats. So I want to do a show with her kind of focused on space habitats, and that's going to be at Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific. So definitely make sure you are there for that, because This is actually an interview that I'm looking forward to more than any interview I've done yet. It's going to be really an amazing show. So please make sure you're there for that this Wednesday, 5 p.m. Pacific. And also, I mean, she actually even has like a hybrid alien story as well. So we might get into a little of that. So thanks everyone for joining me tonight. And before I go here, please make sure you check out my art over at shamanspears.com. That is how I fund myself and keep myself going here. So, all the art is basically like donating to me, except that you give a really cool gift in return. I'm around the next couple weeks, really, before I leave for more adventures. So if you'd like to order a spear off me, you can do that now. They're all autographed by yours truly, uniquely handcrafted energy channeling devices. They're painted with crop circles that have been found around the world. And I do next day shipping on all orders. So again, there's some left of my last two collections, the Yin Yang collection, which is made for the purpose of balance, and the Odyssey collection. I'm working on my new collection right now, which I'm really excited about. So stay tuned for that. I also have a lot of Orgonite pyramids I'm working on, but if you would like to check out the ones I have online now, they are all available right here. Okay, everyone, thanks so much for joining me tonight. Really appreciate you all being here for tonight's show. I know a lot of you may be new here and maybe just met me at Mount Shasta or at Disclosure Fest. So thanks for subscribing to my show. And if you have not yet subscribed, please make sure you do so. Really appreciate it. And again, make sure you're here next Wednesday, or this coming Wednesday the 20th at 5 p.m. Pacific, for my show with Mary Edwards. All right, everyone. Until next time on Apollo's Odyssey. Over and out.